In this lesson, we're going to be defining purpose, your driver, and your why, and how that concept relates to your overall vision for success as an artist. Purpose is something that you've probably heard a good deal about in the general popular culture in the media. And it is on its way to becoming something that is a super driver within not just the art business and the art field, but business in general. So, purpose relates to your why. And as a concept, has been popularized by Simon Sinek, who said that people don't buy what you do or how you do it. They buy why you do it. And think back to how we connect as human beings. We connect first on a gut emotional level, and then we use logic to back up that decision-making process. So, understanding your purpose, your driver, and your why is fundamental to be able to make that connection directly with your audience, not just to get them to buy, but also to get them to engage with you and your work, to feel that sense of community, to build a tribe. So we need to look very closely at how that why relates to success. So the why, in terms of the common phrases that we use in planning, in business, and in popular culture, the why is your vision. Your what is your mission, and your how is your plan. So we have the why, which is your vision, the what, which is your mission, and the how, which is your plan. There are many ways that you can plan to achieve the same what. There are many different whats that can express your why. I'll give you my example here. So my core why, the thing that drives me the most, is making things. I am a maker. I am a creative. I am absolutely a creator. That is my internal why. As a child, I was never not making things. There are other things that were important to me as well. There are still other things that are important to me as well. But if I don't have to do anything else when I get up in the morning, I want to make something. That's my why. As far as the what goes, there is a whole array of choices out there that I can look at as possibilities for making. I like to write. I like to garden. I like to dance. I like to cook. I like to ride horses. I like to paint. All of those have to do with making, with being a creator, putting something out into the world that you have made. I have to choose one at a time as my primary focus, my what. My main what is making art, is being a painter. My secondary what would be writing. So I'm going to pursue that as my main path to success, rather than all of the other alternatives that are out there. The how becomes painting observational landscapes. That could change. And over the course of my career, I've had many different hows. I've had many different stages along the way in developing my own personal style and what mattered to me as an artist. And each thing that I shifted through was a different expression of my what. So my why is being a creator. My what is being a painter. And my how has to do with connecting people to the experience of the landscape. That degree of clarity leads to authenticity in building your audience and a relationship with your audience. So developing that clarity and that authenticity is what we're working on here today. Jonathan Fields over at the Good Life Project has identified 10 basic driver archetypes. And I want to go through those for a minute. They are certainly not the only ones, and there are many different systems out there for figuring out how you might label what your core archetype is, what your core driver is, your fundamental why. But I want to go through his because I think they're really quite useful, and you'll find a link to his free online Sparketype quiz right down here below. If you want to take it, that will help you identify what is your primary driving force and what is the secondary driving force. So Field's 10 archetypes are: first, the maker. The maker is the person who turns ideas into reality, who makes things, who's always creating. A lot of us fall into that primary driver, but it's not necessarily the only one that drives people who make art. So be open to looking at these other 9 and thinking about whether some of them might be the driving force behind what you do. Second one is the scientist, the person who solves problems, the person who experiments, sees a big issue, and dives in to come up with a solution. The third is the maven. The maven is the person who loves learning for its own sake, who, if they're given a chance to do anything else in the world, is going to dive into learning something for learning's sake. Fourth is the essentialist. The essentialist is the person who feels most alive when they create order and structure out of a chaotic field. So the essentialist likes to restructure things into an ordered framework. The performer is one of the most unusual of the 10 that feels is identified. The performer is the person who enlivens every interaction, the person who brings the concepts to life so that others can understand them. Not just people who take to the stage, but people who are driven to perform and bring ideas into a physical reality. Sixth is the warrior. Now, the warrior does not have the connotation that a lot of times we frame it within in our culture. The warrior is not necessarily just a male archetype. The warrior is the person who is driven to organize and lead people. So the warrior is the leader. Then we have the 7th one. The 7th one is the sage. The sage is the person who's driven to teach and share wisdom. Still a little bit different from the maven. The maven is acquisitioning wisdom, but the sage is sharing that. That's the teacher. Not always somebody who's necessarily in a teaching career, but someone who feels the need to educate and to share what they've learned with others. Our 8th archetype is the advocate, the person who champions others. Do you ever find yourself driven to stand up for other people, other causes? Do you desire to save the world? Then you're probably the advocate. The 9th archetype is the advisor. The advisor is the guide, the mentor, the person who gives guidance, but stands outside of the process. So they are standing adjacent to the journey that this person that they're guiding is going on. The final archetype is the nurturer. The nurturer is the person who lives to nurture other people. And I want you to think about these 10 archetypes: the maker, the scientist, the maven, the essentialist, the performer, the warrior, the sage, the advisor, the advocate, and the nurturer, and think about them as this long continuum of people who are very externally focused to people who are very internally focused. And think about where you fit on that sliding scale. And we're going to determine that by looking at the stories of our lives, looking at the things and activities we've been involved with in the past. Because the key to figuring out what our driver is looking at the factors that have shaped our lives so far. So let's open the workbook and look at that first exercise. Pause the video here and open that workbook to the first page. Okay, now that you have your workbook open, look at that first exercise. And I want you to think about your past, because the key to your driver is in the past. We're going to look at the stories that are at your core. So I want you to get in a comfortable spot, get a cup of tea if you need to, your favorite pen, and I want you to think about your life as a journey and the events that have stood out in that journey. And I want you to make a list here of the 10 most important events that really stand out to you. Now, that doesn't mean that they are the big markers in your life. It could be just an experience. It was a really crucial experience along the way. Now, right at this point, I don't want you to write down too much. That's why it's all on just one page here. Try to get to 10, but list 10 different events or stories that are part of the path of your journey through your life. If you're feeling stuck, think about the stories that you usually tell about yourself when you meet somebody for the first time. So, pause the video again and make a list of those 10 stories. Have you done that yet? I'm assuming now that you're back that you have made your list. So turn the page and let's go on to the next step. Now in the spaces here, I want you to take the stories, the ones that seemed most important to you, the ones that seemed to resonate the most. Don't over-evaluate this. I want you to just really quickly describe in more detail what those events were like. Think about including the details of what you smelt, what you heard, what you tasted. Get as graphic as you can in appealing to your senses. Know that what we're trying to do is to tap back into your origin stories, into the things that explain who you've become, what your core driver is. So in the spaces here on this page, and if you need more paper, absolutely grab another sheet and add on to it. But I want you to take some time and write out a more descriptive, at least paragraph, about the 3 most important stories that you identified on that first page. When you're done with that, come back here and restart the video. Now that you have those stories written out, I want you to think about them and look for themes or threads that run through all of those stories. Those threads are hints along the way. They're clues to what your purpose is. So when I look back at my own stories in my past, the reason that I love to create is to make sense of my experience of the world so that I can share it with other people. So I make art so that I can share it with my experiences with other people. Look through your stories for those threads, the themes that emerge in each of those stories, and jot those down here in the space provided. Don't worry about sentence structure or good grammar or perfect words. Just get your ideas down on paper. You can come back and revise this over and over as you need to. So take a few minutes and jot those threads down. Then come back to the video. So now we're going to take those golden nuggets that you just found by looking for overall themes, and we're going to connect those to the list of archetypes that Jonathan Fields identified. Look at that list of 10 possible archetypes, and then look at the nuggets that you just pulled out. Which archetype do they seem to align with the most? Again, trust your gut, because we're talking about getting in alignment. It's crucial that we get in alignment. And by that, I mean that we know what is our core driver and that what we choose to do in our art practice aligns with that. It is what will give you that authentic relationship with your engaged audience. So look at that list of 10 archetypes, look at your nuggets, and in the blank below, write down which archetype you feel is the primary one. Yes, there are going to be some secondary ones, but which one is the one that if you could only do one thing would be the thing that you would circle? That's the one to put in this blank right now. Do that and then pop right back into the video. So in this final part of our exercise, we're going to practice out working out 5 different why statements. So these are just real rough drafts. Just plug in the blanks based on that archetype that you identified as being the most important one. So, for example, with me, I create. So I'm going to write, I create so that fill in the blank. So that first part of it could be the same for each one of those 5, but then test out what that follow-up statement is and look back at your nuggets while you're doing that. That's where the gold is. Fill in those 5. Then look at the one that feels most aligned with you, that you feel the strongest about. Really get in touch with your feeling part on that. Alignment's important. And write that one why statement down below in the last blank space. Now here's your last assignment, and that is to share your final why statement. Remember, it's still just a draft, into the Facebook group. You don't have to share anything else, but share that final why statement either in the Facebook group or on one of our live Q&A calls. It's important to put it out there into the world and see how people respond to it. That helps give you feedback for where you need to make adjustments so that it needs to be, if it needs to be clearer, so that people understand it better. In our next lesson, we're going to be diving into success and what it means for you. Talk to you soon.